Two. I call the member for Braddon.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. And to the member through you who just resumed his seat, he talks about being under threat, the environment being under threat. Well, let me educate the member for Macon. When it comes to my state and my electorate, who is in fact under threat? And that is the worker, the investor, and the general community of the North West Coast and Tasmania. I'd ask the member for Macon, through you, I'd ask the member for Wills, I'd ask the member for Port Adelaide, how many mines are being developed in your electorates? How's the unemployment rate going in your electorates? How's investor confidence going in your electorates? You know, the reality is here, the members opposite, having moved now the amendment, which I understand they've foreshadowed, I'm not necessarily debating that at the moment, but the substantive motion, is they just don't get it. They just don't get it. I mean, is 50%, through you, Deputy Speaker, to the other members, is 50% nigh on of their state locked up? No, it's not. No, it's not. And we are sick and tired in our state, and certainly my electorate of Braddon, is being treated as some social, political, environmental experiment. The reality here is, Mr Deputy Speaker, that we need this amendment to ensure that in future confidence can be gained by those people that go through the approval process and do everything that they need to do. I won't be spending any time speaking on the first part of the bill. As you would expect, I would want to use my time to focus on the secondary, and that is that this bill seeks to amend the EPBC Act to ensure that if the Minister for the Environment does not have regard to and relevant approved advice, it will not invalidate a decision under the Act. And, Mr Deputy Speaker, this section of the bill is of particular interest, as I've alluded to many constituents, small and medium businesses and mining operations in my electorate of Braddon. You know, the question here is, do we want to continue to stand in the way of development or not? Do we want to continue to add to the list of endangered species by adding that of the worker? I don't think so, and I would hope members opposite would also agree that that's not what we want. Deputy Speaker, it was only last week in this chamber, in this very place, that I delivered my maiden speech, and that's a key moment, as everyone who's done it over the last few weeks and those that are yet to come will know is a very special moment in an elected member's time. And what you often speak about indicates the priorities of the particular member. And I can say that because in my maiden speech I made the point very strongly that mining companies need certainty in the application process, that this amendment legislation is certainly timely for me to speak about. And I said this, I said I have a vision of a mining industry that's confident, finally confident, in the processes of approval that they undertake, confident that the process optimises environmental outcomes but is efficient, fair and reasonable, dependable and free of opportunistic political intervention. And I went on to say, Mr Deputy Speaker, Australian mines of the 21st century know well their environmental responsibilities, and it is high time we got off their backs and let them once again stimulate our economy. Now, through you, Deputy Speaker, the members opposite want to get back on the back. Well, they haven't got off. They want to stay on the back of development in Tasmania. And as I said last week, enough is enough. Enough is enough. And if you were to believe anything that's been coming from that side over the last hour, you would think that there is some sort of deep, deep, evil conspiracy that's somehow or rather attached to this amendment. Well, Mr Deputy Speaker, I can say that this amendment is more about finally shining some level of sunlight on the inconsistencies and the vagrancies of this Act and the way in which it opens the loophole door for groups such as Save the Tarkine Coalition in my electorate. And I believe that this amendment is in fact the first step towards achieving many of the goals that we have set to reopen Tasmania for business. The Conservation Advice Amendments is a technical amendment that addresses the risks that past or future decisions made under the EPBC Act will not be invalidated if the Minister does not meet the requirement to have regard to any relevant approved conservation advice. We need to understand what this means. This means that after the process has been through, that everything has been considered that could be considered, and then suddenly something pops up from somewhere that this opens the door that suddenly the minister did not give consideration to. The amendment that we see before us is vital, I believe, for Braddon and my state and other parts of the country, Mr Deputy Speaker, as it is currently the case that the EPBC Act decisions could be challenged and overturned if a court rules a minister has not given due consideration to relative conservation advice, which potentially exposes a series of past project approvals to a possible legal challenge. Mr Deputy Speaker, I believe it is important to note here that this amendment does not reduce or alter the level of protection for the environment. It just doesn't. The Conservation Advice Amendment does not reduce the level of protection provided for threatened species and ecological communities under the Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act of 1999. The amendment is technical and designed to ensure the validity of decisions made under the Act. Now, if the members opposite want to continue to stand in the way of development in the electorate of Braddon and in Tasmania and across the country, be that on their head. They just don't get it. They don't get it. The reality is the former members that were in this place obviously didn't represent sufficiently enough the interests of my state and my electorate, because if they had, the previous parliament, the 43rd parliament, would have dealt with this and would have given the confidence that's required. And the perfect example of this obviously goes to the matter that's already been raised, and that is the issue of Shree Minerals. In the July this year just gone, had their application for an iron ore mine overturned by the courts following a challenge by the Save the Tarkine organisation. And can I digress just for a moment to say, in breaking news I suspect, that they're up to it again. They're up to it again. The Venture Minerals proposal was going along reasonably swimmingly, another great job-creating investment in my electorate. The Save the Tarkine Coalition are up to it again. They've been back to the High Court with a further intervention in that process. And with only a week to go for the case to be heard, obviously hasn't given enough time for that matter to be considered properly without damaging the prospects of the court case. What have we got? We're coming into Christmas. How beautiful their timing is. They are a bunch of geniuses. So we won't get this matter heard till probably February, and as is the case as too often, more than likely jobs will be at risk over the next 2 months through the Christmas New Year period. What a disgrace. They're up to it again. You know, working with lawyers that just want to attack development in Tasmania, continue to use my state, my electorate, as some sort of political experiment, working pro bono to make a name for themselves, a group that sits around and meets at its committee meetings around a kitchen table or a phone box, because that's how many there are, and they're up to it again. They're up to it again. You can laugh. You can laugh. You should know better. You should know better, through you, Mr Chair, that my state is in deep trouble. You should know better too, and you should know and understand what this is all about. Shree Minerals have since had their application approved, thank goodness, and I can say here today that their Nelson Bay mine, located about 70 kilometres southwest of Smithton, has increased production at the mine and is now on the verge of having its first shipment of iron ore out of the Burnie port. It's about jobs for me. That's why I'm here. That's why I got elected, because we are about development, acceptable, approved through the processes, development, and this amendment then goes now to protect, these applications in the future from any past or future disputes. Now, you know, what's going on at Shree Minerals in my electorate, Mr Deputy Speaker, is momentous for not only that company but for that community, a community that's been in a very awkward spiral of job losses over the last few years. You know, it's telling that on the day Shree Minerals finally began work on the mine, bringing employment to a hurting community, this group that could meet in a phone box, this is their quote for the day. When jobs have been made available to people in my electorate, they're wandering to their workplace with pride in anticipation of a paycheck to feed their family, and Save the Tarkine Meat in a Telegraph Box group says it's a shameful day. It's a shameful day. Well, I tell you what's a shameful day is when such a minority group can have such a negative impact on a community, and that's what they're up to. They are economic vandals. There is no doubt about that. They never accept the reality. They'll never accept the umpire's decision. They don't care if jobs are lost. They want to keep their name in the press. They ought to go somewhere else. Maybe they should go to your electorates over there, the ones that are supporting or not supporting this amendment today. Maybe then you would get a taste of what it's like to have people stand up continually, trying to lock up even more of your state. We've nearly got 50%. Just get that, 50% of my state locked up, can't do any development, and they want more. They'll never be satisfied with what they get. You know, in this very area that they protest in, over the last 150 years, hundreds of mines have been mined in my electorate, and thousands upon thousands of jobs, thousands upon thousands of families' lifestyles sustained through that activity. Now, this just can't go on, and I welcome this amendment, and I can't believe that members opposite will stand in the way of this amendment. Through in the months leading up to the campaign, they all of a sudden found their conscience, and together with the Deputy Premier in Tasmania, Mr Green, put their hand up and say, we are pro-mining, we'll do what we have to do. They're a bunch of nerds and other words you wouldn't want to put into this parliament. That, we're distancing ourselves from these people. Well, no, you're not. No, you're not. Your words are hollow. You are not distancing yourself from the Greens, from the minority groups, from the Save the Tarkine coalition. You're back in bed today through trying to knock back this amendment and put forward your own amendments to actually withhold the schedule number 1. That's what you're up to. So don't dare tell people in my electorate, in my state, that you're on their team. You are anything but on their team. You are with the enemy on this. You need to support this amendment. Now, Mr Speaker, Deputy Speaker, mining is just so important an industry in Tasmania and in my electorate, and it has to be a part of the economic recovery. The mining industry's current value-added contribution to Tasmania is about $1.3 billion, or approaching 6% of the state's GDP. I mean, Mr Speaker, this is not to be frowned at. This is a huge part of what the economy of Tasmania is about. I can't stand here on my feet in this place today and not urge members opposite to have some sense of justice for the people of Tasmania. Don't try and play these political games. I can see what you're up to. I mean, it's just absolutely transparent. You just want to be stoppers. You just want to be hinderers. Well, the people of my electorate of Braddon have had enough. The people of Tasmania have had enough. Don't dare put up your hand in my electorate and say you're on the team of the developer, of the miner, of the worker, of the families, when you sneak up here into Canberra, hardly with a member of the Labor Party now represented in this place other than the member for Franklin, sneak up here, a week or two out from Christmas, and actually stand in the way of getting legislation through this House that will ensure that what happened to Shree Minerals won't happen to someone else. And to suggest for one moment that the environment in this country, in my state, is under threat could be nothing further from the truth. This country has a proud environmental record. Have we made mistakes? Are there things that we wish we hadn't have done back then? Well, of course there are. But obviously, the intelligence, the research wasn't available back then. It's now our job to get that and to accumulate that research and intelligence, and we do. Every assessment, every proposal has to jump hoop after hoop after hoop. And even when you get to the end of the hoop and it's been approved, unless we change this legislation, it will always be possible for someone, some group, meeting in a phone box somewhere, to decide it's time to put another spanner in the works, to chuck another wobbly and try and stop development in my state. Well, that time should be over, and I plead with members opposite to reconsider their position and to support this legislation as it stands and as is required to give certainty in my electorate of Braddon.